Hello and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey. In this lecture we're going to learn about namespaces in C#. Okay, so namespaces, this is one of the main ways you have of organizing your code. Think of it kind of like folders for your code. For example, you would have some kind of folder for your game logic, another one for some AI logic, another for the UI, and so on. Basically it helps you keep things organized. And actually we've already been using a bunch of namespaces. Up here, all of these using statements, these are all namespaces. For example, the console class that we've been using, this one exists inside of the system namespace. We can access it by writing using system up here, and then we can access the console class. Although actually when making a console app, the system namespace is included automatically, so technically you don't need to explicitly define it. But in most cases you do need it, so you do need to add using some kind of namespace. And also over here on this template, when we created a brand new project, it automatically created our program class with our main function, and it put it all inside a namespace. Now I should say, technically you don't need to have a namespace, so if I get rid of this and this, yep, this still works, this is perfectly valid code. Basically when it compiles, it will simply place this class in the root namespace. To create a namespace, you really just follow this simple syntax, so you write the keyword namespace, and then whatever you want to name your namespace. Also namespaces, they can have nested namespaces. For example, inside the system namespace, there's a whole bunch of stuff, like for example the IO namespace. This is the one that contains a bunch of classes related to input and output and so on. Then here is a script inside of Unity. So Unity normally has most of their things inside the Unity engine namespace. For example, mono behavior, this one exists inside of Unity engine. Then if you want to do things inside of the UI, then you would use using Unity engine.ui. So basically all of the classes are nicely organized in the namespace that makes sense for them. You can also make nested namespace yourself. You can just write some kind of name, then add a dot, then add another name, and so on. Then one big benefit of namespaces is avoiding name conflicts. For example, let's say I want to define a player class. And now let's say I want to define a completely separate class, but I really do want it to have also the same name, so also another player class. Since classes have to be unique, this does not work. Here we have an error that it says that this namespace already contains the definition for our class named player. And right away, this is also giving us a hint as to what the solution to this problem is. The solution is simply put it in another namespace. So namespace, I can give it whatever name I want. Then I can place this class inside of that namespace. And up here, I can use either of them. So I can use player, and this one is referencing this one down here, this one inside of this namespace. Or I can go inside the CodeMonkey namespace, access player. And yep, with this, now I'm referencing the other one in the other namespace. Then another common issue is sometimes you have a conflict that the compiler cannot resolve. For example, over here I added using system and using Unity engine, and now I want to use the random class. But the problem is that there is a random class in both Unity engine and inside of system. So the two namespaces that I'm using up here, they both have a class with the exact same name. So basically the compiler over here does not know which class I'm referring to. So to solve this problem, either we get rid of one of the using statements, and yep, this works, so now there's no more errors. However, that won't probably break any other place where you're using classes from that namespace. So in this case, for example, if I add the serializable attribute, which exists inside of system, by solving this problem, I now cause this problem. So to solve these kinds of naming collisions, usually the simplest thing is to just write the full name. So for example, up here on this one, I can write system, and even though this one works and this one has no problem, or alternatively, I can just add the using system up here. So this one no longer has an error, but this one does have the error. And over here, I can just write the full name unityengine.random. And yep, like this, the compiler doesn't have any questions. It knows that I'm trying to use the random class that exists inside Unity engine. Another thing you can do with namespaces is simply using an alias. So over here we can say using, then give it some kind of name like Unity random, and then say equals unityengine.random. So basically this one is now an alias to this. So down here, instead of using all this, we can use this. And if there you go, it does work. This can be quite useful when you have a really complex project with some super long names. When that happens, using the alias can really help simplify your code. Okay, so that's namespaces. It's a simple yet very useful C# feature. As your project grows more and more, they become more and more useful.